everything loaded up. Alright, we're up and rolling. How's everybody else doing? Screen looks good. Responsive. Alright. Just need to hit the record button and then we should be good to go. Alright. There we go. Alright, layers up, palette out, navigator. That flipped upside down. And let's work in reverse for a little bit, huh? And that's the drawing. So I think there's some tweaks. I already see I want to make in reverse. Which I might do. Swip out the liquify. Wrong layer. A little more stability in their placement. So it's perfect for the liquify tool, right? That should be okay. Good evening, people popping in. What's up? I'm doing great. Reminds me, I forgot to post this, and it was just the media. And pin. There we go. Forgot about that. Yeah, I'm doing great. I think. I hope. Good evening. Pull up a seat. Take your time in the toilet, whichever wherever you're at, right? How are we doing out there? Like my little critters here. I haven't figured out a name for them yet. It's part of my larger kind of world building project I'm working on called loosely entitled Bramble. And I have a whole production list I put together of things I wanted to make. So this is a prey animal. And so they're out here eating some kind of berry, and got the whole family. They're a pack animal. Maybe trashberry, would that be a good name for their common name? So that's what I kind of got going on. Actually, it's nice to see. I worked on this during the day, and so I guess I had a lot more glare than I thought I did, but feels okay. Gotta check something over here. I'm just going through and tweaking some things. I'm kind of trying to push these out a little faster. I'm using a little bit of the a technique I saw on Feng Zhu's YouTube page from like 10 years ago, where he kind of did a small sketch and then took that, blew it up, you know, did a little paint over, and then threw some photo textures on top to kind of add image density. So if I were to go back in time, let's see, do I have the photo one in here? Oh, there's the thumbnails. I thought I kept a version of the photo one, but I guess I did not, because that's just the colorized enlarged sketch with the drawing on top. So I guess I didn't keep the photo textures. So, oh well. Thought I kept it in there. Oh well. Yeah, but I kind of had some bark and plant life and other things I kind of stuck in there. And I don't know, maybe there's some, I don't know if it's still visible in the paint or not anymore. If there's any spots that have any of that. Well, you can see maybe a little bit right there. Some of the bark texture I put in there. That could be some of the photo stuff right there left over. But there's not a lot left in there. It was kind of, he talks about it as a way of creating, not so much replicating the texture, but kind of creating some visual noise, some kind of visual detail. So, rather than, you know, trying to copy the whatever the texture is really there, and that way you can you're not relying on it to create your effect. Because if you rely on it to create the effect too much, it's harder to control it. Because you have to kind of be dependent on whatever you happen to have or find to give you the look you want or think you want. And so by treating it more as like a visual noise effect to kind of toss on there, so there might be some, yeah, there's a little bit of photo right there. You can kind of see the texture in there. I threw down a bunch of stuff in here, so. But it seems like a pretty smart approach to it, so I've been playing around with it a little bit more recently, just because I've been going through and rewatching his content to see if there's, you know, things that might be of interest or use to me, or I can bring to the classroom, or, you know, whatever. So yeah, so it's, you know, I think it's a good technique to play with. I'm just trying to go through and clarify a few things and hopefully jump into the final kind of detailing and cleanup phase, which shouldn't take that long. I think I'm calling it like berry dumpsters, or I don't know, maybe some people have got some good idea for a name. but I imagine them being about the size of like a small to medium size like trash can, and they tend to be more of like a plant eater over being a meat eater for this kind of critter. Started this one a couple days ago. Some of the more kind of recent projects taken just a little bit too much time, just because I had a lot of very fun distractions throughout the month of October. So I needed a break from that one anyway, so I could go back to it, be a little more fresh. Because for like my portfolio projects or personal pieces, I like to kind of finish it and then let it sit for a bit, and then come back to it for a final finish. Maybe you do that too. For those who aren't familiar, this is the Infinite Painter app, and on the iPad. It's actually on Android as well. I don't know how the features compare, because I seem to recall that it wasn't as feature complete as the iPad one is, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong about that, but does some unique things that other ones don't do that I like quite a bit, including some tools I'm definitely going to use today. Help me kind of clean things up as I go. Have a good night. Have a good night. Let's see, 7:30 here, so 7:30 p.m. I think that helps. Merge that down. And then let's break out the smooshers. How's this one doing? It's not doing a lot. That's interesting. Now it's definitely doing something. Anyhow. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everybody popping in. Good evening. Good evening. So we're going to get some cold weather this weekend. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I appreciate that. I was trying to figure out what I can do to bring it to a finish. I went through and kind of smudged some things, moved some things around, and now I'm kind of yeah, just here chilling with the dog under my feet and keeping up with the. Let's see, maybe I'll use this one to do some of these shadows in here. Kind of push these. Get the subsurface, not subsurface, the ambient occlusion brush going here. I need to like push these That's our form. This is what we use for a form builder brush. It's this kind of pencil brush I designed mostly for kind of ambient occlusion effects, but I think it's going to work really well for what I want to do here. Good evening. Yeah, I kind of feel like I should do the digital stuff at night, just because you know, it shows up better for me. There's less glare. I mean, I guess I could close up all the windows and everything, but good evening. How's my power on here? 74. Okay. This is gonna work okay for this guy. Good evening. Good evening, everybody popping in. Good evening, everybody popping in. How's it rolling out there? Good evening, everybody popping in and out. How are we doing? Good evening. How are we doing? Out there. Good evening, everybody popping in. But nobody got dizzy off of that. Good evening. Good evening. How you doing, Bosch? You okay there, Bosch? I think we're gonna get you a bath. Maybe tonight. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I appreciate that. Just trying to finish this one a little bit faster than the last ones. And good evening. Good evening. How are we doing for time? Alright, I got 45 minutes left. Perfect. It's starting to feel a little better. Oh, yeah, it's having some good times digging into those details, right? Yeah, some of the brushes are really great, like these shape drawing brushes. But you can also put textures on them. I should maybe make another one of those, put a different texture on it, just so I have more to play with. But so it's a fun, it's a unique app because it's got some unique brush things going on with it. I think Clip Studio Paint is a similar brush to this, but you can't put any textures into it. It just draws shapes, which is great. Ah. Yeah, well, Photoshop's fine. It is actually has its own issues. Even like, people are annoyed with all the AI stuff, but it's called Infinite Painter. I put it down in my pinned comment there at the bottom. But it has some really unique tools in it. So like this shape brush right here, you can just draw a shape. It has this kind of cool spider brush. That kind of does this, let me put a different color on it just to make it more obvious. But it kind of does this webbing thing. And then has some really unique like perspective drawing tools in here. It's easy to like flip your image, so you can check things from either way. You can customize the interface, so like the color picker, I can move it around or get rid of it if I don't want it, and I can pull it back out. And then like the buttons I have across here are ones I pulled out of the settings, and you can stick it up there. You can move things around, so I can grab this. I can grab this little tool right here and move around. Oh, I can move to the top. I didn't realize that. It's interesting. I have the navigator out, so this is like a thumbnail version that I can flip upside down or stick wherever I want it. It's kind of give me a mini version. Yeah, so it does a lot of really unique things that I like. And again, there's a lot of perspective tools too that it has that are really unique. So like it has the usual perspective things, but if you grab the circle brush and you're drawing in perspective, let me put a bright color on here and make it obvious. but where you place that circle, it will change its perspective. Let's see, I broke something here. All right, let's put this back in here. So I draw like the circled, so it uses whatever brush you're using last, so I need to switch to a different brush. But you draw a circle in perspective, and it snaps to the perspective. So instead of it drawing, just whatever ellipse, it actually snaps to the perspective, and if you move it around, it changes its scale and its size and proportions based off of where it falls into that grid. And then you can go, this way. So if you're drawing like cars or something like that, that could be really handy if you're, you're trying to put on some wheels on a car. And then you get them in the correct perspective. So it has some really, really handy tools. Again, that works for all of your brushes. So if I want to use a more textured brush like this one, I get that texture in the brush as well. Yeah, so it's not as well known. It used to be really buggy, like it would crash a lot. I've only had it crash once, and that was recently in a long time. And then it has it has your usual different perspective types. So it's got there's isometrics if you want to draw things in isometric perspective. It's really handy. And it does the same thing with you can draw like a square, like a rectangle in perspective, and it'll snap to the perspective. Yeah, I think it's like 10 or 15 bucks. It's also on Android, so it's not just an Apple product. Though I think the Android one, I don't know how fully featured it is compared to the Apple one. But again, it's great because you can go. It has deep brush settings. You can't import your like Photoshop brushes or your Procreate brush. You have to make your own. But I've even made like screen tones in it. So like you have for like manga for shading or whatever. So I've made my own screen tones. I've got splatter brushes, and I think what was that set to a special setting on there? Let's see. But it's got a pretty deep setting. Yeah, it's set to multiply. Normal. There we go. It's my spatter brush, and then I've kind of made a bunch of ink brushes. I'm planning on putting that out a little pack eventually, but I have like these are like your tapered throw ink, so you get like that taper effect on there. But yeah, again, Procreate's really good. It does its own unique things too. But again, like this one has its own, like if I'm just drawing using the circle tool right here, what's great about it is you don't have to go to a separate spot to like activate the settings in it. It's automatically there. Or if you don't have the circle tool on and you draw a shape and you want to snap it, in Procreate you have to hit a separate button, and this one you just tap the shape. So you don't have to go to a different spot to like put it down, and then I can grab that and move it. And the other fun thing too is you use 3 fingers. It changes your brush size. So like if I draw like if I want to just change my brush size, I move 3 fingers up and down. And then if I want to change its opacity, I can move left and right. But what's really interesting is when I draw like a shape like this, I tap it, it puts that into the mode where I can change the brush size of the stroke I made, and I can change its opacity. So if I put down a brush stroke and it's like a little too thick or thin, I don't have to redraw it 10 times to get the right size. I can just do that. So that's really handy. And then the other thing they do with the snapping of the shapes, it's also unique, is I can draw a shape like that. And let's get the opacity back up. And so if I draw it, it kind of snapped into a smoother shape all by itself because I held it at the end. But if I tap this line, it creates these different points on here. So I can actually move these around, and I can change them from being rounded like this one to being angled. And you can also add in additional points. And then once you click away from it, then it's then it's pixelated. But before it does that, you have this option to kind of move things around. So if you're drawing some architecture or symbols or signs or kind of more physical based stuff that needs this kind of effect, it's really easy to do that with this app. So again, it does a bunch of unique things that other ones just don't do. Procreate, though, you can paint on 3D models, which I think is really cool. There's some limited animation in Procreate too as well, but this one doesn't do those things. But again, you can the interface is really editable, so I can pull out things like my color palette, resize it, and stick it where I want it. Yeah, I know he should, like, I've actually done work for the company that does this. I did a commission for them a few years ago, and a couple of years ago I did a presentation at Lightbox for them as well on Zoom, which was a lot of fun to do. But it's like, it's like 10 or 15 bucks. I don't think he makes that much money. It's not like it's just one guy working on it. I finally met him in person at the Lightbox Expo earlier this month, or I guess end of last month. But yeah, it was so good to go there that first time. I've never attended in person, and so I was really impressed by kind of the organization and the content and all the people there. And there's all these young artists that are really interested in art, and I really enjoyed the whole experience. So, hats definitely off to those people putting that together. So definitely recommend people check that out. But again, it's a really cool app. It does some really unique things. And again, I'm kind of very much a shapey based artist, so I love these shape drawing tools. And actually, I'm gonna make another one of these textured ones, and so I've got other. Let's see. Let's duplicate you. Create. That name is fine. And then let's get into the settings of that one, huh? And let's put in a different texture. Has some other really these shape brushes right here. I should probably show those too. I haven't really used them very much, but they do some really cool stuff as well. Let's go with that one. What do we go with that one? Alright, maybe shrink it down a little bit. Or play with the depth just so it fills in more. Yeah, that one should be really good. And then let's see if we can maybe rotate it. And fixed, and then I want to rotate. I think there's a way of changing. There we go, the angle. Too many commission portraits. That sounds like a good problem to have. Yeah, again, it does really unique things, and I really like it, and I'm sad that more people don't know about it. He just doesn't have the marketing budget that Procreate has. Like at Lightbox, Procreate had this huge booth, with tons of people hanging out the whole time. It was actually kind of funny because Adobe had one there too, but their booth was pretty empty. People were a little bit annoyed with Adobe and their AI nonsense, and so I think that was pretty evident at Lightbox, where people just didn't really go over to their booth very much. I think they're giving away Adobe's decided like on the iPad to give away Fresco for free, and it's an interesting app. It's got some cool like watercolor brush stuff going on in there, and oil painting, thick paint brushes, and so yeah, it's a definitely highly recommended by me app. Even if I was using it before, I was doing stuff for him, and some of these things I didn't realize until I was doing the demo with him. He's like, "Well, have you tried this thing?" And I'm like, "No." And I gave it a try. I'm like, oh wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, I'm more annoyed by it. So I teach at a university here in Virginia, and it's on your phone too. By the way, this app, it's on phone. So there's like a smaller. But I haven't really used it much on the phone, but I can see using this shape brush on the phone. That would be interesting to play around with on the phone. But we had an incident where a teacher replaced student work with AI for a promotion, and people were understandably very upset by it. And we had a big round table about it, and it was just kind of not what people needed to hear. And there's some faculty that really want to push it into the program, and I argue that it doesn't add any. So even if it becomes required for a job later on, so say they're working for Disney or whatever game studio, or have clients or whatever, and it's required as part of their job, I just don't see us adding anything to the students' abilities by requiring them to use it now, because it's so easy to use. Like, it's you just type in things and things appear. Maybe you have to like type in more things for things to appear, but there's really not. There's no skill. There's no development of their abilities or their insight or thinking. Yeah, because you literally lose out on, like, I think the people that I find that generally support it, I think they don't understand that the idea is built in the process. The idea is not the final product, and it's a whole stage. It's all the stages of development that you go through to figure out how things work, is where your ideas come from, and AI can't do that at all. It just that's outside of its realm of abilities. It's not part of its feature set. All it does is kind of recombine data into these kind of generated images, and there's a host of other problems too with it, where like, well, who's in charge of deciding what kind of images it can generate? Like who, because it's not really clear about who gets to make those decisions, and then do you want to be influenced by those decisions? Like we've seen what social media companies can do with with manipulating people, and they've run experiments with it. Like Facebook has kind of publicly run experiments. It's been announced by them after they've run them, about how they've kind of redirected opinion or traffic or events and things as ways of kind of seeing the influence of it. And then what do we do if we rely on our perception through these systems that are opaque and unclear and secretive, and whose motives are not necessarily my own? Like, why would I trust it? Like, I don't trust, I use social media, but I don't trust it at all. It's definitely manipulated algorithms, and it's like like they'll push your stuff if you use certain features more. Well, like, why? If my audience doesn't want to see reels, why does it have to be pushed on them? Just like that's not even like a devious thing. That's just their corporate structure trying to validate the changes that they've made to the application that I don't really like. I don't have any really interest in. It's very rare for me to watch like a short form video. I just don't find it very engaging, and I don't tend to make them very often. But they want it, and so they're kind of really pushing it within the program. And but you think about it, that's really basic. That's not really that nefarious. It's not manipulating legal problems or our rights or the way we think about things. Then the other issues, like there's the proverbial CP in it, the kitty stuff. So the Lion's data set was found last year to contain 32 million images as part of the training data. They claim they've since removed it because they had very, it's not like the people that were making the training data decided to put it in. It was just whatever, spiders they have crawling around for information and grabbing it on the internet just grabbed it. Like it just wasn't thinking about it, necessarily. At least I hope that's the case. But that ended up being about 5% of the data set. And again, they have said they've removed it, but there's people that had systems that were trained on it before it was removed. And then Adobe's claiming that their stuff was, what's it called? It was acquired through like legal and appropriate means. But then it turns out like their initial training stuff was all done with Midjourney, which was not acquired through ethical means. So, there's all, there's the power use issues. So if you're, concerned about environmental issues, that's definitely a big area. It's like Microsoft wants to reopen 3 Mile Island just to power their AI systems by itself. So they want to open a nuclear power plant to power their Copilot system that helps you find files on your computer drive and edit your text or write text for you. Like that just seems like ridiculous. People argue it's efficient. I'm like, if it requires that level of investment in infrastructure, that doesn't seem like a very efficient system. Meta was doing a similar thing where they wanted to get exclusive access to a certain portion of a nuclear power plant's output. It got put on hold because where they wanted to put the server, there was some kind of rare bee that lived there, and so they had to put that on hold. So thank you, Nicolas Cage, I guess. But so those are all just like things that I've learned recently. I've mostly just ignored it. Like I find it annoying. I don't like it, but I've just mostly ignored it. But then it became an issue within my department, where we had this big round table, and I brought up some of these issues, and some people were concerned I didn't have like every single stat on hand, like the percentage of the CP that was contained within the system. But I'm like, like what percentage is okay? Like, is it, are you okay with 10% or 5% or 1%? Like, what's the okay percent? I usually think that percent should probably be 0. Yeah, but you can Google those things I just mentioned. Google's, and then of course there's also the proverbial enshittification of everything that's going on as a result of it. So, you're trying to find information on Google, right? And it's really hard right now because it's it's an AI summary at the top and then 20 ads, and then you have to like scroll past all of that to find websites that actually contain the information that you're looking for. Which I think is a big problem. It's like if you can't use the system for what you need it for, then that makes it useless, I think. And or it's like you want to find some reference on Pinterest for a project or something. And you start sifting through all this AI slop, and Google has its own issues with bias, right? So yeah, there's like a whole host of problems that I have with it. And then one of the things I've found with artists, the ones that support it, they'll tell me two things. Yeah, I kind of miss going to the library too. Going into the card catalog and trying to figure out where stuff's at, or just like sifting through random books. I did that. I lived within walking distance of a library when I was a teenager, and so like that was always nice walking down there and discovering something, right, that you couldn't find otherwise. I miss discovering things. These days it's all kind of like there's all these algorithms and things that are all kind of linked in together, and but I found a lot of fault with all these algorithms. Like if you're trying to listen to music, it'll play the same song over and over and over again. But yeah, one of the things I found, and this I found in talking to people who support, who want to include these image generators and idea generator tools, they call them, into their system, is one thing I've found is they'll tell me two things. They'll always say it's more efficient, so it's faster at doing things, basically is what they're saying. So therefore it's cheaper and more efficient that way, which I disagree with. And then they'll also say that it's more creative than they are. So they'll say things like, "Oh, well, it comes up with ideas I would never have come up with," and I kind of think that's a you problem. It's it's a their problem. It's not a my problem. Like I've got so many things that I want to do. Like I have no way of doing all of them, and AI is not a solution for doing those things because it doesn't give me what I want. So yeah, it's like, oh, you're not very creative then. And these are people like, the people that tell me these things, I know they're very creative people. Like I know, a bit about their careers and their backgrounds, and there's no reason for them in particular to be saying this. And so like with the efficiency argument, one of the things that most people don't realize is people that are using these systems, they're not actually paying for them yet. So they use actually like for every like text prompt you generate with ChatGPT, it's like dumping out a bottle of water basically, just like pouring water on the ground, and seems kind of wasteful to me, but what's paying for it right now is venture capital investments. And that's where all their funding is coming from. And then in the case of bigger companies like Adobe and Microsoft, it's their stock prices. That's what they're working on and anticipating growth in, is that. So they're trying to just push their stock value up to kind of keep them going, and that's really what it's for, because that's the effect it's having. Because like their users generally don't want it. Like their users have been very explicit about their feelings about these systems, and they're going to lose subscribers. As other options come into play for their applications. Not all. I think there's not really a good one that replaces Lightroom yet. But there's good Photoshop replacements. There's good Premiere Pro replacements. There's good InDesign replacements, and they may not have everything that Photoshop or these programs have, but they have like 99% of it, and the stuff they don't have is usually pretty niche in its need. And then like the again, like the creative one they'll tell me is so yeah, anyway, because you're not paying for the whole system, the actual cost of it, you really don't know if you're being efficient or not. Like just because it does something quickly doesn't mean you've actually cut a cost, because it could be quick now, but it may have also peaked at its limit. So there's because of server sizes, computer speeds, and all that, it may have already peaked in terms of its capacity, or most it might get marginally better at what it does, but it's not probably going to exceed these its current state. So, and then like the creativity one, it's just like, I don't know, man. It's that's not something I would say out loud. That I don't have good enough ideas. And again, some of these people I've talked to, like, they've worked with George Lucas and James Cameron and Guillermo del Toro, and on major films, big major blockbusters. Like one he's worked on, like, it's called Empire Strikes Back. That's like, that's no small, achievement, right? To work with those kinds of experiences. And they played significant roles in working on those films, in terms of being, idea people and effects people and all of that. So these aren't stupid people that I'm talking to. Like, they're very intelligent, very, very capable people. Though what I have found is the people that tend to support it, because I don't want to pay attention to it, but I've been kind of forced to pay attention to it. The people that tend to support it, I've noticed that they tend to fall on what I call the production side of art. So they're not people that need to necessarily come up with original ideas. Some of them are to a certain degree, but they tend to see their job as being a smaller piece of a larger project. Like they're, a cog in the machine, if as a poor analogy. And so I've noticed that it tends to be those type of people that that kind of lean that way. And so, but people kind of in my area where we like to come up with ideas, and I've got, background in not just doing, say, concept art and digital painting, but like real painting and, going out and landscape painting and galleries and all of that stuff. I've got this kind of larger background where I'm kind of like the independent mind. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, I'm completely independent or free from, bias or whatever, but I recognize, try to recognize where I have mine, but it's like, I'm not the kind of person that sees himself necessarily exclusively in that production role, and like some of these people do. And so I think that's kind of maybe where part of that disconnect comes from, is they're seeing it as a quicker way of moving a production forward, which I understand, but I just don't see like this ideation phase as being the real thing that holds back a production like that. It's if anything, it's an area where a lot of movies and video games and other entertainment properties probably should be spending more of their time, because you look at the number of flops, major flops that these major studios have been producing, and seems to me that they should spend more time and money investing in this idea phase of storytelling and visuals than trying to cut cost in those areas. So it's not like they're spending a ton of money on that stuff anyway. But what do I know? This is Infinite Painter. I have it listed there in the pinned comment. We were just talking about it a minute ago. It's got some really unique features, like you can move the color palette around, and there's some really cool brushes and perspective drawing tools and shape drawing tools that other applications don't have, that I really, really like having access to in here. And yeah, definitely. We're seeing that. There's actually a lot of movies now that are kind of going back to more of the traditional effects. They're still doing a lot with digital, but it's kind of they're doing more of the blending thing. So if you like, even like Denis Villeneuve, his I do have some custom built brushes that I made. I haven't made them available for purchase yet, but I'm thinking about doing. I have like an inking set that I'm pretty happy with that I want to put out there. I just need to like sit down and make, do some tests to make sure I'm absolutely happy with it. Like this brush right here is part of that inking set, but I use it for other things too. But like Denis Villeneuve, if you watch Blade Runner 2049, a lot of the shots in there are practical. Like the police station is an actual miniature. So like the police station in the movie is a miniature set, which I didn't realize till I got the Art of book. And I'm digging through it, and I'm like, wait a second, there's like a guy standing next to that building. And they put in fog machines and all that, but then they also put in CG stuff to kind of bring it around, and so they definitely kind of use a mix in that film, which I think is really where it helps to do that. Yeah, in fact, maybe we're kind of coming to the end anyway here, so I go to bed want to go to bed in a few minutes, but let me grab the book. I've got my art books all right behind me, so I've got I have all my illustration art books upstairs behind me. All my painting ones are downstairs in my theoretical painting studio that I don't really use right now, but it's my living room. Yeah, here's the book. Let me bring this out wider. And let's see if I can find... there's actually some even traditional concept art in here. This stuff's digital, but there are some like pen and ink drawings. Like here's a really nice cityscape. It's Photoshop. Some more cityscape stuff in here. But I wanted to find... there's some marker sketches right there. Pen and ink marker. Look at that, some pen and ink storyboard sketches. There's some pencil, and these are all pen and ink, I believe. So they used like traditional media in here. I should bring this to my students. Here's some more traditional media stuff. But I wanted to find some of these miniatures they built. Been going back and looking through a lot of these books because sometimes they kind of sit on the shelf for a long time. Just because let's see, there's Wallace's Love's Office. What else do we got here? I'll put that where it's more visible for you. So flipping through, Leaving the City. Oh, where's the miniatures at? Maybe it's more in the back. I saw them in here. That's what my memory tells me. Early Unused Concepts, Dark Vegas. They even got Sid Mead to work on this movie. He designed some stuff for them. I need to pull it back just where I can find the miniatures. So, some more pencil sketches. That was fun to see. Or maybe I saw it somewhere else, but I remember seeing it. But it was like, a lot of the sets were actual physical miniatures. See, Cityscape. I think it'd be here with the city stuff. Advertising. I'm gonna put this up where it's just more visible. Evie's Bar. Morbius 21. Brutalism. Apartments. Kay's apartment. Where's the police office? Rooftop, LAPD. Let's see if it's in here. There's police station chapter. Let's see, there's an interior. Josie's office. Maybe I didn't see it in here. Maybe I saw it somewhere else. I remember seeing a picture of like them standing next to the building, and there was like smoke machines and stuff going off around it. But I thought it was in here. Maybe is there a table of contents in this thing? Oh, I definitely do. I don't always incorporate things. Like I tend to not be as realistic to a certain degree. Unreleased locations. Let's see if I can find it. I've seen it. I know. I just maybe it's just not in here. And I thought it was in here just because there's stuff in here. Yeah, because it's a really, it's a gorgeous movie. It's a little slow, but it's still a really gorgeous film. But maybe this is all just the concept art and doesn't have any of the sets or anything in here. Because I know they did a couple books, and maybe I was looking at images of the other book that's more about the production, because this is all pre-production stuff in here. Because I'm not really seeing any shots of sets and film stills in here, so maybe it's in a different book. So I know they built the car, his flying car. Let's see if I missed anything here. Slow burn, yeah, yeah. Except it's even movies like Prometheus, right? It's kind of a mess. Story-wise, lore-wise, and all of that with Alien, but it is a gorgeous movie. Like the production design on it's just really, really nice, and all of the color work and all of that's it's a really beautifully shot film, even if it's a mess. And I can tolerate that. It's like looking at a nice piece of painting or something like that. Even if I don't really see it as a great film in terms of all of it working together like I'd like it to. Yeah, it must be a different book. But if you were to Google, Blade Runner 2049 miniatures or sets, you'd probably find a bunch of stuff in a search. Yeah, it's just not in this book. I thought it was. Could have sworn it was, but I guess I'm just wrong. My memory is wrong. But it's a good, it's a gorgeous book. Recommend it. Yeah, so I appreciate a lot of that stuff. That they can do that, but then yeah. So and then I think that was true a lot. If you look at Dune, the Dune movies that Denis Villeneuve's been doing. However you say his name, he's doing a similar thing. So there's a lot of practical sets. Yeah, but it's a cool looking book. I've thought about on these live streams, it might be a good idea for me to take part of it, just do a book review, because I've got a lot of books. It would take probably a few months for me to go through all of my books, or if I were to do one per live stream, because I've got I've got a bunch of art books. But I love those. I've been into the art book thing since I was a student. I've got all the prequel books for Star Wars, and I was showing my students. I've got the Lord of the Rings art of books for the movies, and yeah. So I've thought about doing that. The problem is with the live streams, there's not usually that many people in here very consistently. But maybe that would encourage people to come in more often to look at the books. So some of these books are hard to get now too. I looked at the Lord of the Rings ones because they brought them to my classes to show my students, and to buy them now, I think they're all if you want to try to get a newer copy, an unused copy, they're $100 or something for them. Which so they've definitely increased in value because I guess they went out of print. Yeah, but I have a whole bookshelf behind me that's packed with these art books. Actually, it was funny with the Lord of the Rings ones. I hadn't looked at them in a long time, probably a few years, maybe longer. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this and this and this and this other thing. Oh, this is pretty good, and this is interesting, and Um, so, but yeah, I've got a bunch of other ones too that I like. I've been looking at the Star Wars. What was that movie they did where they were stealing the data? Um, the one that's actually an okay movie that Disney did. The Jin Ursa girl in it, and the that one Hong Kong guy's in there. Yeah, Rogue One. So I have that. It's got some really nice stuff in there. The art book for that. It's all very Star Wars, of course. Um, I did appreciate that J.J. Abrams was using more practical stuff for those movies, even if the stories weren't very good and the characters weren't really the characters. But I was happy to see them using less computer, more practical. They still used a lot. They still use a lot of computer. The trick with the computer stuff is, I think, to blend it with the practical effects to amplify it. Because there's just something about the real stuff that just makes a difference. And even if there's other problems with the films, it doesn't it keeps them from looking strange. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted those movies to be good. Like, I really did. I was like okay with the first one, with what are they? Force Awakens. Like, I was okay with it. I wasn't like, oh, this is the best thing ever. I was like, well, yeah, it's okay, I guess. And then that second one they did, I was just like, what is this? Like, I felt sick coming out of the theater because I have a lot of, if you're older too, like me, you have a lot of kind of cultural attachment to Star Wars. And I just felt sick coming out. I was like, I avoided all the spoilers. I did see the trailers, but I avoided all the reviews until I went to see it myself. And I walked out and I was like, what was that? It was clearly made by someone who hated Star Wars, was making fun of it. And then the other thing he was doing in there was he was using that movie to make fun of J.J. Abrams. So not only did you get like J.J. Abrams making a mediocre Star Wars movie in the Force Awakens, then you get a second movie where this guy's clearly making fun of J.J. Abrams. He was using Star Wars, to mock another filmmaker. Which it's fine to mock other filmmakers, just don't use Star Wars for it. And then that third movie, that thing was just an acid trip. I had no idea what was going on or why. The motivations were like, what? The Emperor's back all of a sudden for some reason? Yeah, so because JJ, what Ryan Johnson did is he just went through the first movie and just like undid everything. Just made it, like, this is no longer important. This doesn't matter anymore. This is he just turned the tables upside down. And maybe that needed to happen, to a certain degree, because it kind of revealed the weaknesses of the first movie. But I just felt like I think instead of tearing it down, it would have been better to make it better. And I've liked other movies he's done. I really liked Looper. He did the famous Fly episode in Breaking Bad. I haven't watched his other detective movies that he's done, just because I'm just kind of I was just so disgusted by what he did with that Star Wars movie. But yeah, I really liked Looper. I thought that was a really entertaining, smart time travel movie. And like the fact that they like, there's people point out like they never got the original trilogy characters together. Like, they never got Han Solo and Luke and Leia in the same room in the movies, which is bizarre. Like because like I was surprised they even focused on the original characters at all. Like, I just figured they were gonna originally I thought they were just gonna leave them all behind and start a new story, which I would have been fine with. New characters, but I think they decided to bring in the old characters to tear them down to make the new ones look better. Because I've noticed they do that in a lot of these kind of rebooting of franchises. They'll bring in the original characters just to make them look bad. and that's supposed to improve our impression of the new ones. And I think people don't like that, and I think it's one of the reasons why they've had so much trouble kind of getting Star Wars to be popular after its initial movies were made with Disney. Is people are like, well, I liked all these original characters. Why are you making them look bad? Why? Like, what's the why is that helpful? Well, I don't even think it's so much that they want to ruin the childhood. I think they just want to make it their own. So that, I don't think it's like they're trying to like be mean to me. Like, they don't care about me. They're trying to like attach themselves to a newer generation, and because of the reputation that the older one has, they want to knock that back and take it down. It's kill the past if you have to, or whatever he said in the movie, right? It was a little heavy-handed on that edge, but because they want it to be its own special thing, and saying, oh well, our versions is so much better, therefore you should like what we're doing more because XYZ reason, and so I think that's what they were doing. So they, instead of being creative and coming up with new and interesting characters and perspectives and stories, they want to recycle the old stuff but give us new characters that that they had full control over and that were going to be around a long time, that weren't really really old, like Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher and what's his face, Harrison Ford are. And I would have been perfectly happy if they told a really cool in-universe story with Star Wars with brand new characters with nothing to do with the original ones. Like, I would have been excited to see that. It's like the most interesting character in the trilogy, the new one, was that Finn kid. There's this stormtrooper who abandons his position and turns out he's got some kind of Jedi ability. I think that would have been a really interesting story. Like that, I was curious about that, and they took that nowhere. Kind of turned him into a joke, actually. But and then the first season of Mandalorian, that was really really solid. But you could tell Disney didn't anticipate that series to be a success. Like, they didn't have any merchandise. And this is Disney, like they're like the kings of merchandising. They're merchandising Star Wars, which was like the really first king of movie merchandising, and they didn't have any baby Grogu's running around. But it proved that you could come up with original characters that everybody liked. And they totally dropped the ball on that. So, it's kind of been interesting to watch what they do with it. Though I did go to attend at Lightbox. I attended the lectures and presentations by a lot of the the Lucasfilm people. It's like Doug Chang, Ryan Church, John Majura, people that have worked as concept artists for for Lucasfilm for a long time. And they didn't really have anything. They didn't really talk about story stuff there, like because you wouldn't expect them to. But they were just talking about how the design aesthetic of Star Wars and things to consider when you're designing for productions like that. Like, one of the things they pointed out is that in Star Wars, it was really good. I really enjoyed their discussions. Actually, it was really sad. The one that was really focused with Doug Chang, there was almost nobody there. There was maybe like 20 or 30 people in this massive auditorium. And I think part of it is, he's just not very visible online, like a lot of the other Lightbox artists often are, because he's more of like a art director now as opposed to an artist as much. And so I think people just don't realize that it was there. But it was great, going and attending and chatting with him a little bit afterward. But he made this point. He said one of the things he says when you're designing for Star Wars is you want to design things so that a 5-year-old could draw the building or the ship. So if you think about the the Millennium Falcon, let me grab a layer here. The Millennium Falcon is easy to draw, right? It's like that's all the Millennium Falcon is, right? Super easy. Or an X-wing, it's an X, with a thing sticking out of it, and you've got like it's super easy to draw an X-wing. And so he said that was one of the points he made. Is like when you're designing stuff like that, and you want it to be really memorable and accessible, it should be really easy to draw. Of course, the Death Star, is just that. It's a giant nipple, right? An inverted nipple. But yeah, if you just look at a lot of the Star Wars stuff, it's it's really easy to draw. There's your the snow speeders, or the walkers. It's a box with legs. All that stuff is really easy to sketch, and so I thought that was really, really thoughtful. It's like anything, and then it should be fun for a 5-year-old. So if you make it easy to draw for a child, and then you make it really cool, so it has because it has all those details, but the details don't get in the way of the design, and then you've got yourself a design that tends to last. So I thought that was a really interesting comment that he made there, that I found really helpful and thoughtful. Yeah, the sand thing, it's just like it's a big, easy shape to draw. Or R2-D2, he's a really easy shape. Like, he's very, very simple. But yeah, I need to call it a night. I'm licking my painting, as it were. But thank you for coming in. Appreciate the conversation, and probably be back tomorrow. And talk to everybody later.